let's get started. It is we're recording this on June 15th. This is another edition of Mic Drop Mondays, the official podcast slash show of the Care for Prez campaign. It is June 15th, Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. We're going to get started with Brother Kevin Boyer. I was out in Columbia, Missouri on Tuesday this past week at his branch's meeting, and he is the president out there of branch 763, and he's going to come on the show and tell us how it went. How did it go, brother?
Thought it went really well. Had and happy Father's Day to you. I know it probably echoed in your house for quite a while this morning with all those kids you got. But I thought the meeting went really well. We had a good turnout and had a lot of questions. And I told them early on that they could ask you anything. And even though you were a little under the weather, as you described it, you still managed to hold it together for almost an hour and a half talking with them, and all of them were pleased with it. They hung around after the meeting to, I guess, ask you some things that they didn't either want to ask in front of everybody else or just tell you thanks for coming. And I know that you had a really long day that day, and you still had almost 3 hours of driving to do after you left us. So I'm thankful that you made the effort to come.
Yeah, it was it's my pleasure, man. It's kick the tires tour and getting out to as many places as I can, just so that people have a chance to meet me and hear from me and ask any questions. We didn't do any prep for this, but if you remember, or if you can recreate it, when I got up there to speak, usually they're just like, "Hey, Mike's here," and he's going to speak. But you went through this kind of intro and talked about how long we've known each other, some of the things, which I normally kind of when I go talk, I leave out a lot of the kind of introduction and biographical stuff. So I thought it was pretty cool the way you did the introduction. I don't know if you want to try to recreate that.
Oh, well, I did. I mean, I want them to know that, that I was bringing in somebody to speak to them that I knew and that I've known you for a while, like I said, 15 years. And when I first met you, you had just become vice president of Branch 11. And I came up to Chicago for a committee of presidents meeting and at there in Greektown, and that
Yep.
we had breakfast on the first day I was there, and you bought me breakfast, so I was happy with that.
Must have been either the gyro omelet or the gyro skillet.
Yes, the omelet, I believe. Yeah,
Right.
and there was a lot. I mean, that was kind of handy for me to have so many restaurants within walking distance there. And then they had, like on the second night, they had the Carriers Ball. So
That's right.
a lot of the people that came for the president's meeting, we all went to the Carriers Ball too. So that was kind of neat. Other than that, I mean, I knew that you had aspirations to do even more than what you were already doing in the branch, and you ran and won for a business agent in 14, and then they've seen fit to reelect you every time since. I think that things are going really well. Everyone that I talk to from Illinois talks about the amount of training that you all do and the amount of outreach that you do with each of the branches, which is something that, we're fortunate now that we have a business agent for us that follows that same education push to get people ready to do what they need to do to help their members. I know that I talked about how one of the neat things that you did was you used to do, and you haven't had much luck in the last couple of years, but the winter extravaganza, and how neat that was to get everybody that you could involved in that, going to the field museum and then being able to sled down the hill that's next to Soldier Field, and then just
Right.
the camaraderie and getting people together for a fun day off on a holiday weekend.
Yep. Yeah, we haven't done that in a couple of years. The field museum used to be free, and we're just not getting enough snow. And or they could make the snow in that on that sledding hill, they can like blow it in. But the last couple of years, it just hasn't been enough snow, and the field museum is not free anymore. But we get a little shuttle bus. We have breakfast at the Union Hall. Even bring out hot chocolate sandwiches. All the kids out there playing in the snow, and sometimes we'll have board games. Back at the Union Hall. But it's fun, little fundraiser we do for muscular dystrophy. Call it the Care of Extravaganza, the Care of Winter Extravaganza, I think.
Well, I don't wish winter weather on anybody. And I
You
kind
gotta
of,
embrace it, man. You gotta
yeah.
love it.
I stopped liking it when I had to start working in it, and we've had, some here, and oh gosh, it's been 12 years or so ago. We had like 22 inches at one time, and it stayed on the
Damn.
ground for a month and, never got above, freezing for more than a month. And it was just, I had a mounted route that basically turned into a 400 stop in and out, had to jump out of the truck 400 times to climb over snow
Snowbank.
banks and stuff just
Right.
to deliver the mail because I wasn't taking it back to the office. I mean, that if I brought it out, I'm leaving it. So ain't no fun just doing it again.
Exactly, man.
But my
They're
wife,
paying you to play in the snow, man.
yes, yes, yes. And so after I retire, then I'll probably like snow again. And my wife likes it some. She grew up in Bourbonnais, just south of Chicago there, and she likes it more than I do, for sure. But she works inside, so staring out the window at it is different than being out in it. So
I used to love I love working in the snow. I used to have because in Chicago we have a push cart. Most of the carriers use a push cart. We're able to put like multiple satchels on the cart, and it's kind of more efficient because there'll be 100, deliveries on a single block. So anyway, we'll load down the push cart. That's how we normally carry mail. But when there's snow on the ground, I had this big long like toboggan like sled, and I'd put either the tubs or the satchels in the sled and just like pull it down the street and do the deliveries that way.
nice, nice. Yeah, the area that I deliver now is it's on either side of two neighborhoods on either side of a country club, and I have a lot of older, wealthy people, and they have lawn service, which translates into snow service too. And a lot of times now, when it snows, by the time I get out there to the route, they have not only cleaned the sidewalks, the driveways, and the entry, up to the front porch on these houses. They've cleaned the street in front of the houses too, and so that it makes it a lot easier to get around. So I don't mind it so much. And then at the end of the day, I drive home to my neighborhood where the snow plows for the city come through about a week later, and go right down the middle of the street. So it's not quite the same.
I know we're talking about we got into the whole winter thing, but I'm curious about the we're in the summer. I'm curious about the heat. Is it hotter more? With the change in the climate and stuff like that. Is it hotter more where you're at in Columbia, Missouri?
We have a lot of days where the temperature is above 90, and the problem is that the humidity is starts at 90 every day, and then we don't have much wind to even push anything around. So it is pretty brutal. Thankfully I have a mattress for I got last summer at the end of last summer, and it is a game changer for somebody that I drove an LLV for the first 25 years. I carried mail, and then I had an FFV for six or so, and then and basically all those have is the that 6-inch school bus fan that just kind of pushes the hot air around like a convection oven. I feel a lot better at the end of the day with this mattress than I ever did either with an FFB or an LLB. And I'm thankful that, the vehicles that they're buying now and going forward, that they'll all be, air conditioned. But I don't know how much time that, they're allowing for, people that are on park and loop and stuff to cool down. We do have a postmaster now that he's changed and kind of evolved over the last 20 plus years that I've known him. He hasn't always been here, but now he embraces the heat safety and stuff and encourages our
That's
people
good.
to, take breaks as needed. And, we push a lot of people that if you are just getting really hot, they have break time convenience stores, stuff like that, where they have these big walk-in beer coolers, and you just go up there and stand in that cooler until you feel like you can go back outside again. And like I say, he encourages it. He encourages the supervisors that we have to make sure people have water, and we've got the cooling towels, and we've got uh, the stuff that you put into water for hydration and things like that. Now, we haven't had a real hot spell yet this year. So
Yeah,
when
right.
that happens, you know, I I I hope that I don't have to remind them of all the things that they've been telling our carriers, for the past month or so leading up to the heat, and that they remember that they told them that they could take, as many breaks as they needed to cool down. And if you're in a LLV or an FFB, even on a mounted route, sometimes you have to get out of that vehicle just, and stand in the shade
Yeah, it's so
for a
hot in
minute
there.
because it's so hot. Yeah. And those things like people have put a thermometer inside their vehicle or something. Frankly, I don't want to know how hot that is. I just know that it's, really hot. So,
It's hot enough to fry an egg. I know
yes, yes.
that.
And and neither one of our lots in Columbia, the two stations that we have, we've got about 90 something city routes and 36 rural routes, but none of the vehicles are covered. So they're in the sun, all day. Uh, either at the office or out on the street. They don't start as till it's at 7:30 at one office and 8 o'clock at the office that I'm at. So if you're getting out to the street at 10 in the morning or whatever, you may be out in that for 6 or 7 hours very easily. It, like I say, it gets really still here, and the heat index would be 110, 115 for extended periods of time during the summer.
What do you think about the this year's HIPP program, the heat illness prevention program? Last year, or previous to this year, there was like this 20-minute video that everyone had to watch, and now they say you get the 20-minute video at orientation, and then every year thereafter, everyone just gets a stand-up talk.
Yeah, I
They
guess.
mailed something to our house as well, which I don't really like that. You don't give me no work while I'm at the crib.
Yeah,
I don't like that. But it was more information, so you can kind of take it or leave it. But they're still supposed to give you that information via stand-up talk. Obviously, the biggest thing is that, somebody's been off work, they got to get reacclimated. That's always a big thing. And then generally your newer employees, younger employees, they don't have the information because they don't have a lot of years of being a letter carrier. But what do you think about the? I mean, I don't know. Do you think it's sufficient the stand up talk, or would you prefer the video thing, or what do you think?
well, I think it's because they got caught not actually showing everybody the video. I guess they moved on from that by just deciding that they're not going to show it at all, where we're going to have a stand up talk, and you should do what you need, what you need to do to keep yourself safe. And I'll do the first day orientation when we have CCAs, and it's a lot of for all of like mid and northeast Missouri. That so when I go and speak to them on Monday of the first day, they may not necessarily be for my office. They may be for any number of offices in mid Missouri. But I always talk to them about, what kind of job did you do, before this, and
Right. Have
and
you ever
are
worked
you,
outside before?
yes, have you ever worked
Yeah.
outside? Because in Missouri, basically, there are October is nice, and April is nice, and then you have winter from November to the end of March, and then there's about 100 days between the middle of May and the end of September where the sun is trying to kill you.
Right.
And if you are not, if you are somebody that has either worked your whole life inside or not, been outside for any period of time, that then it is an acclimation process that you need to take very serious. If guys tell me that, they work construction or they were a roofer, then I know that they can, handle the
Right.
heat. And got guys that, work lawn care is a big business here, guys that are out, on the back of a lawnmower or running a weed eater for, as long as it's daylight during the day. Those people, they seem to do really well. If somebody tells me that they never had a job before, or they worked, just inside, then I have to caution them to, this is very serious. I mean, this you're outside for a very long time, and I don't think that they stress it enough. If they're only going to talk about it for 20 minutes at your academy, and then they'll hear a 5 minute safety talk a lot of times before they even come into work. That's the 5 minute stand up they have every day. That's a lot of times that's before a lot of the CCAs even come into the office.
Right.
So we have to catch them on that. And then usually my OJI people I have, they stress that a lot. And I mean, everybody's got their own, they figure out their own like jug or whatever that they want to use when they come in, but we still outfit them with one. And then we have refrigerators full of water. We've got ice machines that are free for these guys to use, and it's kind of one of those things where if you're not taking advantage of that, then that's on you. But I still want to give you the tools to keep yourself safe.
Yeah. In the stand up talk, there's you can give stand up talks throughout the summer season, and obviously we can be involved in those. I think in most post offices, as letter carriers, talking to our fellow letter carriers, especially the new ones. But as far as the HIP, they're supposed to still certify that everyone has received it. And if someone's off work, they're supposed to give them that stand up talk individually or however, upon their return. So I don't know. Um, I don't know if it's going to end up being what we would call sufficient or not. But my thing is always with all of the safety programs, you have to involve the letter carriers in the safety program. Otherwise, the safety program will never be effective. And to the extent that the HIP is a unilateral postal program, in order for them to tell OSHA that they have a heat illness prevention program, it's going to be insufficient. But if they would sit down with us and come up with a program that would work, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be so extreme, but there's things that letter carriers understand about heat safety that people that are not letter carriers just don't get, and we need to be involved in that. So we'll see how this thing progresses, evolves. You know.
Yeah, and I wonder if they think it's a success, then we'll have the very same thing next year. And if they get a bunch of negative feedback on it, they may change one or two things. But I don't. I think that they're stuck with doing the what the law is requiring us to do the bare minimum, and that's what we'll do.
Yeah, and
And
we don't even know
until
what that's going to be because they got some discussions going on with OSHA regarding if they're going to have national standards that they can apply to every workplace for people to work outdoors. Because right now there really is no standard coming from OSHA.
yeah, that's why you see roofers and guys doing pavement work and concrete and stuff like that that are farm workers. Anything as long as they don't have a standard that they and that I realize that the mail's got to get delivered one way or the other, and that's what they're trying to do, but you still have to make it so everybody goes home in the same shape that they came in, you know kind of, at least
Yeah,
make it safe while they're there.
and uniform. There's some uniform items that should be incorporated that would help, dry fit type stuff, head covering type stuff. If people kind of go out and get on their own sometimes, but those things should be part of the uniform program, which, that's a whole other story. But the uniform program is insufficient, but it's just an example. And then the vehicles, we're supposed to be getting this funding. I see some carriers posting pictures of the next generation delivery vehicle out there, what they call the platypus, that looks like a duck, but it has air conditioning, Everyone's like, oh, it's got this big window. Yeah, there's like air behind that big window,
Yeah,
So there's like you were saying, having and you have the metrics now. Getting out of that LLV is probably the number one heat safety thing that we can do, and there may be some problem with that funding. I don't know what'll happen if they cut off the funding. There was talk in the Senate this week that they were gonna change the bill so that the Postal Service wouldn't get that extra funding to fund the next generation delivery vehicle. So if that happens, I don't know what that means. Of course, they've been slow rolling that thing out anyway, and I'm not exactly sure why, but there is some out there, and in theory, every letter carrier would have one within a couple of years or whatever.
yeah. I've only seen them in our region in Missouri, Kansas. I've only seen them in Topeka because they're an S&DC site over there, and I've been on the Joint Safety Task Force for 20 years, and the S&DCs are the only places that they're putting them, as far as we know, and so uh, they have though they have maybe four or five by now, but they have to keep one as a spare at all times because they told me that if someone's been trained to drive on one, if it breaks down, then that's what they have to bring them another one. And they got more rules on them than they do as if you're in an LLV. If your LLV breaks down, well, as soon as a rural carrier comes back off their route, we'll bring you theirs.
But the next generation delivery vehicle, they keep one spare in case that one breaks down out there.
Yeah, and
I didn't know they were doing that.
they did that in Topeka, at least I know that they said that once you're trained on one of those, then it's that's what you have all the time. And I haven't been to Topeka now since March, so I don't know if how many they've got, but they were really slow rolling them out. They had a lot of the Ford E vans. Their
Right.
whole the whole parking lot that they have for the uh, post office is electrified, so you could plug in an electric vehicle at just about any parking spot that's there. So,
But those are left-hand drive vehicles, right?
right, right.
They look just like the ProMaster. Is that the
Yes,
one? Yeah, I've seen a lot of those. Like you say, at the SNDCs all over the country, they're putting in electric docking stations and bringing in electric vehicles, which in theory, a lot of the next generation delivery vehicles would be electric, or maybe even all of them. But those are right-hand drive vehicles, and the ProMaster or the E-Transit, I think they call it, that Ford vehicle is it's the regular standard left-hand drive vehicle, which is not going to work if you got any mounted delivery.
yeah, I know that one of the parts of the that bill that they wanted to uh, pull out was the electric part of our vehicles. They didn't want us to have any more electric vehicles. It was just a odd thing that they were doing. I mean, we would like to have any new vehicle, period.
Yeah,
Uh, they're the Volmas that we have are busy all day using baling wire and duct tape
right.
to piece
I
these 30-plus-year-old vehicles,
think 40.
yeah, back together. I mean, and it's uh, in our office. I think that I talk with the Voma pretty regular, and we probably have it out at any one time, 20-plus vehicles that are in the shop waiting
Damn.
on transmissions, engines, whatever.
Wow.
And so it's hard to keep a vehicle. And like I said, if something breaks down, a lot of times they have to wait on somebody to come back in to take uh, their vehicle out to whomever had the breakdown. And it also, you don't have any like extra people working CCAs or whatever because there's no vehicle to put them in if you did bring them in.
Right. Yeah, it's a big deal out there. All right, man. I want to go back to when I was out there at your branch meeting, but I did want to make a comment. You brought up your current business agent. You mentioned his name, Dave Teagarden, and I know from talking with a lot of the people in Region Five, which is what Missouri, Kansas, Iowa. Is that it? Nebraska.
In
Yeah.
Nebraska,
Yeah, Nebraska, those states. You guys love him, and I just, I love him too, man. He was when I first became the business agent. He was the RWCA, the Workmen's Compensation person, and he covered your region and he covered mine, and I think another region. I think he covered Region 7 as well. Um, but he also had, and so he would come and help us out with training people, OWCP reps for the branches and stuff like that. And then we would have grievances that go all the way to arbitration. And I came to learn that his real specialty, in my opinion, was doing arbitration. And I learned so much from him. And he would help me out with training the advocates. He'd help me out with, kind of picking the arbitrators, the theories of the cases, just how we were doing arbitration. He got some really big wins for us. I think he had won a few in a row. He had a streak going there, which I don't think is still alive anymore. But anyway, I learned a lot from him. And you mentioned some of the training programs and some of the things you guys are doing in Region 5 now, which I'm sure he learned, picked up some of the things from the way I was doing things or the way we were doing things in Region 3. So that warms my heart. It's good to hear that. But I think I got kind of good at arbitration, and we as in Region 3 got kind of good at it, but it was basically due to him bringing us along and showing us the ropes on that. The brother is very good at arbitration. To this day, I still try to stay in touch with him and talk about different things pertaining to arbitration. Like we got to pick our arbitrator panels coming up, so I know we'll be having some long, in-depth conversations about that. And so, anyway, just give the audience an idea of how this thing works, man. If you want a good product for the members, you got to collaborate and you got to learn from the people that that know different things, and that's one thing I think your business agent, to his credit, he's that type of guy, and he's a hard worker too, man. That guy constantly at it, I love him.
Yeah, he is a good dude. And then, like I said, he's changed the way that we do uh, training and stuff when they have the regional rap session. In the old days, it was uh, just a business agent, and then the two RAAs would stand up front and guide you through a 2 hour PowerPoint or whatever, and then whatever we had from the visiting national officer. But Dave has adopted that multiple training module where we had 20 something different classes at the last rap session, and the next coming one we usually do it. It's near the end of January or in a weekend in February. He will have it now where it'll be those training classes all day on Friday and Saturday, and then the Sunday would just be the national officer and the rap part of it with the questions. But I mean, an individual from a branch could go there and take a half a dozen different classes on different subjects that all can help your members back home, and it just makes for a more well-rounded, uh, training session as far as I'm
Yep.
concerned. And it I think he's increased the amount of people that are coming to it just by people knowing that that's the best training that's available. So he does a good
Yeah,
job,
it's
and
awesome.
he uses a lot of people, not just the RAAs and the RGA and the work comp people that he has in the office, but he uses like academy graduates and stuff like that to teach classes. He keeps people on the has them in working on trying to pre-arb stuff. And like I said, that's where I knew him from first before he was branch president in Kansas City. He was a pretty strong arbitration advocate for that side of the state. So he comes from that background, and a lot of the people that he uses are have that background, and that's fine. And they're training them up still, and I've sent a couple of my people to it, and when they've come back, they've all had that attitude of wanting to do more
Right.
because they're able to see the benefits and the results of it right away, and we can use them right away on stuff like that. But it's still even with all that, we still have the backlog on grievances and on arbitrations and stuff because we can't get enough people on the other side or judges, to schedule. So that's the frustration part. So I can
Yep.
only imagine how bad it would still be, if we were doing things like we did 10, 12 years ago. So,
Yeah, which I mean, a lot of times, and it's not everywhere, but a lot of times we're able to kind of, get it right the way we want it on our side. But in my opinion, due to some of the holes in the contract and due to the change in the postal service, they no longer have an incentive to work on grievances. If it's left up to them, it's our grievance, and they would just let that thing sit. And we see them not resolving grievances at all the steps, and we haven't been able to come up with a solution for that yet. But it's been growing probably for about 5 years now. The backlog,
and I don't want them to, I know in a lot of areas they've been able to clean up, like a lot of grievances where they go in and just do wholesale. They decide that they're going to work through a couple of hundred grievances in one place, because I would be okay with that if each one of them was given their due merit and the consideration on it. But the people that we have that are waiting on arbitrations and stuff on some personal things, that it is becoming the textbook example of justice delayed is justice denied.
Yep.
And I see these people, you know, at work that I know, uh, we've been waiting a year on their arbitration, uh, for something that they, should be compensated for. And I don't know what to tell them, on a any given day basis, that it's delayed because they just won't schedule it, or because they don't have enough people, to do these things. And that's one of the things that still frustrates me, to no end.
Yeah, and we went through this long period of contract negotiations, and we're going to start again next year. And it's like, why are we not? Obviously, Article 15 is a very important article for us, and we had a memorandum 1939 that at least gave us a way to force management into arbitration sooner. One of the things that is said in that memorandum was that if something has not been scheduled in 4 months, that it has to be scheduled. And it would force the Postal Service to either get more arbitrators or get more dates from the arbitrators you got, or just resolve the grievances, because at the end of the day somebody's going to resolve the grievance. But the Postal Service has an interest in delaying the thing because it's our grievance, and whatever resolve comes out of it most likely is going to negatively impact them. They're going to have to pay out some money, they're going to have to make some change that they don't want to make, that kind of thing. So our interest is always in pushing the grievance, and their interest is always in delaying the grievance. And I hate to say it, but right now they're winning, generally overall. Not everywhere. And I mean, we're fighting, everywhere. Our people are fighting, fighting, fighting to get these things resolved on behalf of our members. But like you said, it's very frustrating when you have someone who you can't get an answer to, and they're just sitting there. So, um, that's one of the things I think need to be addressed in upcoming contract, is the grievance procedure. And there's a lot of things I think need to be addressed, but that's one of them.
And I used, and I guess naively now, I used to think that at some point, these things that they keep violating over and over, that there would be finally we would get to a number that they of money that they would have to pay, that it would cause them to correct their behavior. And what they've done instead is they've just decided, well, we're just not going to do anything at all.
Right.
We're going
Right.
to, which is not what I, would have hoped out of that. I would have thought that they, when it got to a certain point on money, that somebody from higher up would realize that and would make these people, correct the behavior that they're causing this problem every single day in a lot of offices, across the country. And what they've decided to do, instead of correcting that behavior, is just delay any kind of settlement that you would have. I, the amount of frustration that the people we have, uh, on any given day, it's just, I'm just trying to, keep them moving forward, and in the hopes that some of this stuff would be settled, uh, in a more timely fashion. And for the most part, I think that most of the cases that we have now that are still waiting arbitration, I want to say we've got 19 cases waiting at arbitration, which isn't a lot for, some branches,
So
but
it's
for,
a lot for a small branch. I mean, you're not
yeah,
a big branch. I mean, that's a
yeah,
lot.
uh, most of them are on equitability, that they
Right.
will not agree, on overtime equitability. And so my guys have to write it up. We try to figure it out. They act like all during the quarter that, they'll work with us, they'll work with us, they'll work with us. Then we get to the end of the quarter, they decide, okay, we'll give you 25% on that, you know, and my guys won't budge, and they don't have to ask me on that. I tell them to accept what they think is fair, and if they want to send it up, then they send it up. And I'm thankful that they stick with their guns on it and stick to the guns on it, and that the guys that we have that are going to do the arbitrations, I know that we're going to win them
Right.
just because we have all the information, and it's one of the
Yeah.
things like how can you look at that and come to any other conclusion? So I don't know why they're all afraid to uh, make any kind of decision on a local basis. So it's send it up. You know.
Yeah, going back to your point earlier, it's like you would rather in that case, and we used to call they used to have when there's like a bunch of grievances and you'd come in and try to resolve them, and they'd call it a shakeout. We're going to shake out the grievances. We started calling it shake down, because
Yeah.
you're not getting the right resolve on the grievance necessarily. I mean, you might be, you might not be, but what you're saying, and I agree with that, is like, look, if our people filed this grievance, and if our people moved this grievance, our union people, hey, we owe it to them to make sure we get the right result. So Renee, Renee wants to jump in here. She has a question.
Sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, Mike. I had a question for you. With today being Father's Day, I thought this was a good time to ask. One of the questions that people always have, as far as with you, is how do you balance your work life with with all your kids and stuff like that. So today you were able to get on and do a segment. I know you said you were out in like, well, what'd you say? Was like Wisconsin or Michigan or something like that?
Michigan.
Yeah, so
I
just
kicked them
like
out.
if you could if you could just, enlighten us with how do you balance doing both?
Um, so I think it's you kind of learn different tricks of the trade or whatever, but um, we're like a family unit, so everyone helps out. So like I knew we were doing this today, so I kind of had it mapped out. So we spent a lot of time earlier in the day doing different things, and I got my older kids out here, the teenage boys. So they, took the kids over to the park or whatever. So it's a lot of planning and strategizing, and everyone pitching in. I don't know. I feel like it's important for my kids to know that we're fighting for a better world for them. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
um, there's as a parent, you want to spend as much time as you can with your kids, but you also want to leave the world in a better place than you found it, for them and the next generation of people. So, which is kind of the same thing in the union. You want to build this thing for the next generation of letter carriers, and so we talk a lot in the family amongst with the kids and stuff about the things that I'm doing and why I'm doing them, and of course, they're younger, but I like to think that they support what I'm doing and what we're doing to try to make our union stronger and to, bring forth positive change and things like that. So we just compartmentalize our time a little bit and take advantage of the time and the moments we do have and enjoy ourselves a lot. And then we get to work. So try to keep that balance going. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I know you have like a union family there. We had ran into your mom at the May Day
Yeah.
rally there. She was like right behind us. And I think she saw Melissa had on like I think it was something NALC, and she was like, "Oh, do you know my son Mike Cariff?" And it's like, "Yeah, do we know him?" Yeah, so yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
my mom, she's been with the Chicago Teachers Union for a long time. She still is. Even she's retired as a teacher, but she still works for them, kind of part time, and she's heavily involved in all that stuff. So, I mean, I kind of grew up like that, so it's normal to me. What do you do? You got kids?
Well, I have two. So, it's a little easier, I guess, balancing it for me with my two and
Not
saying that,
necessarily, because I have
both.
older ones, so the older ones help with the younger ones. You don't have older ones.
Nah, it's easier balancing with two for me, like way easier. Like today, when we went into the office to work today. I take them with me on the weekend. My son calls it the Granch. Like, oh, we're going to the Granch today. So, and I mean, like Sarah knows my kids, so I guess it's the same thing. Like they're involved and they know, a lot of the union there. They're my especially my daughter, since she's a little older, so she's deeply involved herself. So yeah.
Do you guys so I know you guys in branch 825, you don't have, when you go to your union meetings, you don't have like a place for the kids or daycare or nothing like that. So nobody can bring their kids to the well, put it like this, if somebody had to bring their kids, like sometimes you might have to bring your kid to the union office. If you had a necessity to bring your kid to the meeting, you would just have to skip the meeting, I guess, huh?
Hmm.
No,
No, people
they've
bring
come to,
kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys
Hmm.
bring your kids? I never seen you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
my
I
yes, they
don't see a lot
do.
of
they
kids
think
in your
it's
meetings.
yeah, no, they think it's boring, so that's
Yeah,
why
Well,
they
yeah.
don't go.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. But no, other than that, no, they've been to the meetings.
What, they just sit there with their iPads or whatever?
Pretty
Yep,
much.
yep.
Yeah, and that's part of the balance too. Is sometimes, like you have union activities that are family friendly, and the kids get to know the other union people's kids, and then they make friends and they interact and all that. So anyway,
Yeah.
my baby's having a birthday party next Sunday, so we'll have to figure out the filming of this segment.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but also you can bring your kids if you want.
I have some questions.
And I wanted to ask Kevin about back to the talking about the event. I mean the meeting when I was out there. You want to
Yeah.
jump in now, or you want to wait for that?
That's what I wanted to ask about. I want to know what kind
Oh
of
yeah,
questions they asked Mike. Like what
that was the question I had too.
yeah.
Well, I think a fair amount of the ones that would be asking questions, they listen to uh, your podcast, and they listen to a half a dozen other ones, and
Yeah.
so they've made themselves aware of what the issues are and stuff. And we've had a lot of uh, thankfully in the last year or so, um, a lot of more involvement with I'll say young, the newer people that we have, which is, and I'm glad to see that they're taking, making an effort to take stock in what we're doing and how they want the branch to go forward. They're pretty progressive on a lot of the ideas they have, a lot of things. Columbia is a college town, and we have a pretty diverse workforce, in Columbia. So there's a lot of different issues that are brought up at meetings or on the workroom floor, and so they ask about things like that, how they'll affect people. I think that a lot of the things that they asked questions on were about the contract negotiation process and how that would become different if Mike was president, and he was able to speak on that for a while. They asked about the makeup of the executive board and would that change, and then we had quite a discussion on that. And Mike, I think, was pretty eloquent in his explanation that we don't want to, for 15 of the executive board members, those people represent the region that they're from.
Mhm.
And somebody from Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas should not be able to pick the business agent for California, Hawaii, and Nevada,
Right.
nor would we want somebody from there picking the person that we have
Mm-hmm.
to represent us. And that's one of the great parts, I think, of our union is that we have, somebody that represents each region. And then when we have elections, if the majority of the carriers in that region that vote uh, don't think that that person is representing them, then they'll vote them out and we'll have somebody else. We have pretty full participation from our branch on delegates to state, national conventions, to our rap session, to the trainings that we have and stuff. And so they're getting a pretty good representation in my branch of what's going on, and a pretty diverse cross section of the people that we have. So there's a lot of different, it's not just the officers in the branch, or some things that we have, in the past might have been steward specific, but we have people that they may not hold any position in the branch other than just being a delegate, but they're there to bring that information back to the other members, and they can cover a wider range of opinions that way. The president picks the stewards in our branch, but once I pick my chief steward, he pretty much has his choice of who he wants to use as stewards, and I don't tell them what to file on unless it's something that comes to me specific, or how to do something there. I let them take that case from informal all the way to informal A, all the way to through formal A to step B and to arbitration if need be. And I think that it helps them work freer, that they don't have to worry that I'm going to cut them off, or nip some case in the bud just because I don't like the way it's going.
Yeah.
Uh, Mike talked about the delegate process and how branches that the the way that branches elect or appoint delegates for these conventions do affect the outcome of things that are voted on at the convention, because the convention is the supreme body of the union. And if the delegates are mostly retirees at the national convention, then that all the votes are going to reflect that makeup of the people that are there. And if you want wholesale change, then you have to start at your local branch, and it's going to have to be that way top to bottom. And at the national conventions, that you start seeing a higher percentage of younger, newer people that are getting involved, that are making resolutions, trying to make changes, that they're going to, it may take them a couple of times to get something through, but eventually, if the idea is good, they'll have the majority. And that's the way things work, in our branch. We vote on it. There's never been, everything that we've passed in our branch in the last 30 years that I've been here, I didn't approve, I didn't necessarily approve of whatever it was, but you know, the membership was right. And so that's what we work with. I think that Mike did a good job of showing that he's at least receptive
Mm-hmm.
to all voices and opinions, whether they agree with him or not. And there was some little things that that he and I talked about, openly in front of them, that he and I, we had a disagreement on, but it wasn't, we weren't, adamantly, mad at each other or something about it. We were able to discuss it. And if you can't get something out in the open and discuss it, then you're never going to get to the solution on it. So,
Right. Right.
and I think, well, a lot of that, Mike could tell you that just as an example, after they brought out the TA last fall,
Mm-hmm.
they had the tour around the country where they took all the national officers and the business agents around to however many different cities that we went to, and I happened to go to the one in Minneapolis. and it
Okay.
was on Halloween. Just happened to fall on Halloween.
Is that
And
when Mike was red?
yes, Mike, he dressed up as a as
Anger?
I don't have we don't have any children, and so I don't know what the movie it was that he was dressed up as, but somebody told me what it was, and then I thought, well, that's pretty funny, you know. But he was the only one that was dressed up, and so we had the discussion about I thought that because of the way that he negotiated basically this thing, you know, like he wanted to say on his own, then he probably, you know, had a good reason to drag it around, you know, to every one of these cities and talk about it, you know, to try to sell it. And Mike disagreed with that, and I understand that he probably didn't, you know, it was a stinker, and it probably shouldn't have taken him very long to realize that it wasn't going to pass, and we probably should have got to that point earlier than later, and especially sooner than the, you know, 2 years that it took to get to it. And so I agreed with him after, you know, he talked about that probably shouldn't have done it at all. So it was one of those things where, especially when they didn't allow comment after a certain point, and he kind of embarrassed himself by shutting off the microphone and not letting Mike even ask any questions about it. He wouldn't let him do it from the podium, and then he certainly wasn't going to let him do it from the floor.
Oh, yeah.
That
Yeah.
that you know, all in all, that was a meeting that could have been an email. You know, that every person that was there in the audience, I think, felt cheated, that it was just like a PowerPoint presentation that we weren't allowed to ask any questions about.
Yeah, for sure.
And if it didn't, if all these people that were there weren't already convinced going in that they were not going to vote for it, they certainly reached that conclusion by the end of that day.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Kevin, I think your comment was if you're just going to present to us, then just mail it to us. Just put it in the mail, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the idea was to have a rap session, and Sarah, to kind of answer your question a little bit, you know, these are kind of like rap sessions when I get up there, because I want to hear from obviously the president of that branch, but also, you know, all the members or whatever. And so there's a little back and forth, and we're kind of discussing topics, which is, you know, which is like, I think what you're saying, Kevin, I agree with. It's a much better process to figure things out when you're having back and forth and stuff like that and different opinions. And those rap sessions regarding the TA were the opposite. They would just sell jobs. And not to say that there were no pros or no reasons to vote for the contract, but there was definitely cons and reasons to vote against. And if you're having an honest process, you're gonna look at both of those. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Was there any, like, particular questions that, like, Mike's answers really stuck out to you?
Oh, I think that everybody that asked a question felt like they got it answered.
Okay.
You know, that kind of thing. And if, you know, even if they had a follow up to it, he answered that too. I mean, he's not shy about it, and being honest about something is he's not trying to sell anybody on anything. He's just
Mm.
trying to tell you that he thinks that he's got a better idea about how we should do things, and a better idea about using the people that you have to help you get to that point. You know,
Yeah.
you don't they don't all these 28 people weren't elected to just listen to what some, you know, one person is saying should be what we do. They should all be able to voice their opinion and have their opinion heard, and also to not only to have it heard, but to have it, you know, them take some time and consider it. It's not it's just not working the way we've been doing it the last couple of years. And for, you know, older guys like me, the money for the contract, it wasn't any different than, you know, what I'm used to from over the
Mhm.
years and
Mhm.
stuff. But that doesn't mean that I was happy with it, but it was just, what I was used to hearing. It was the other, the workroom rules, the 1260 rules, the things like that, that just made it more and more, like there was no way that I was going to vote for this. And there was, things that I was able to agree with the people that we have that, in the long term, it's not improving from the bottom up.
Mhm.
It is not. And the thing that bugs me, I mean, this has come on more in the last 6 months or so for me, is the simple fact that the clerks have 100% cola across their whole range.
Yeah.
And people we have that, that if you're at the bottom, you're getting 50% cola or whatever. And that is the simplest thing that they could have fixed. That the amount of money, when you're talking about this many people, is going to be that much difference. I mean, it's just, I know it sounds overall like it's a lot of money,
Mhm.
but to tell somebody because they've only been there for 3 or 4 years that they don't deserve a cost of living allowance that's equal to somebody, my age that's been there for, 30 plus years, that they're not worth, that the cost of living for them is less than the, you know, cost of living for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what happened is, as a result of that, it's really weird how the thing played out because um in the they had a agreed to settlement. APW did prior to our what became the DOS award, um, and we really thought we had a better deal than they did, and at the time it really seemed like a better deal. And it still is in a lot of ways. And the main thing that was an improvement that's in our contract, even with table two, is that everyone gets to the top of the pay scale versus an APW contract. They fall like right now we're topping out at say 81 or something like that. And they're topping out, I think, at like 74. So that's a significantly less amount of money because if you go a long career, which is how it traditionally was. Nowadays, there's so much turnover that people don't have a long career. But if you have a long career, what you top out at is the most important because even if it takes 15 years to get through the pay scale, you're still going to have another 15, 20 years where you're going to be at that top step. And then when you go into retirement, it's going to be based on your top three, your high three. So that's going to factor in and raise that annuity amount as well. So we thought, hey, we're getting a great deal there, but we had a prorated cola. That was the give and take. And APW didn't have a prorated cola, but they had where they didn't get all the way to the top. They had a true two-tier pay scale. But over the years, and especially because of inflation rates have been higher recently than they had been traditionally, those pays because they're getting the full, everyone's getting the same amount of a cost of living raise. I don't want to call it a full cola because it's still not you don't get 100% of the rate of inflation. So you still have to have cost of living raises and pay increases, put them together to try to keep up with the rate of inflation if you just want to break even. But obviously, because they're getting those same amounts at all steps, their bottom when they their entry level wage, their entry level career wage for a level six clerk in the APW contract, it was 27.28, and now it's going to be over $28. And we're going to come up. We will come up when they eliminate double A and A, and the starting step will be B. We'll come up right at 26 or close to 26, but still $2 an hour less than what a clerk would make. And we put out a couple of charts to show people you could begin your career as a clerk and make more money and kind of save your body a little bit, maybe
Mhm.
for like 10 years, and then transfer over to the carrier craft to kind of end up making more money, but it shouldn't be that way. Carrier work should be a higher level than clerk work. So encourage everyone to look at the charts we put out on Care for Pres Facebook page or on the Care for Pres website, careforpres.org. Um, but yeah, I think that's a real sticking point for a lot of our members. And those of us that have been around a long time, Kevin, we remember, I'm pretty sure you were around in 1999 when we were having all them rallies and,
Yeah.
just this big push to separate ourselves from the clerks. And, in a lot of ways, it's come full circle. And either they're paid too much or we're not paid enough. I think it's the latter. That we're not paid enough, but clerk pay is very, very similar to carrier pay.
Mhm.
And that came up during the meeting in a way that we kind of agree on, as a whole here, is that by delaying the amount of time that it took to negotiate that tentative agreement, they lost all the momentum that we had coming out of COVID. That,
Yeah.
you know, in the middle of COVID, out on my route, those people out there, if I would have told them that I was going to get a raise to, $150,000 a year because of all that we were doing, they would have been fine with it,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. But we lost that momentum by waiting, and now everybody's just back to, well, it's just a government job, let's give them 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, and we lost the momentum, whether it was what, the guys at UPS used or whatever, to use the public to help us negotiate. That if we had done that during the middle of COVID, when they started the negotiations, then we probably would have had a better chance and better public opinion if they would have ended up giving us, more money.
Mhm.
So, but that lost opportunity. And I don't want that kind of thing to come around again where we have to show the American people that we're willing to, get out there on every day, regardless of what the weather is or the pandemic or, even now in these areas where, they have tornadoes and hurricanes and stuff like that. And oftentimes the mailman still, reestablishing delivery is something that brings people back to some normalcy. And I mean,
Yeah.
when I saw you back, in April, and we were there in Pasadena and helping those, trying to help those carriers out there that, uh,
Wildfires.
through the wildfires and stuff that they had in January, that them being able to reestablish delivery into those areas where all those homes were burned and stuff, and they did it, in years before, up in not just in Pasadena and Pacific Palisades, but years before up in Santa Rosa, up north of San Francisco. That carriers reestablishing delivery brings normalcy back to these communities, and people, they love their mailman. If we can't capitalize on that, then, you know,
We're,
you
and
know,
we're seeing more of that. I mean, if you compare today's job versus the job in 1999 when we won that upgrade and we separated ourselves from the clerks, now with climate change, we're dealing with a lot more stuff out there on the street. We're spending more hours out there on the street. The start times are later. You're out there in the heat. You're out there in the dark in the wintertime. The job has become a lot less safer. We got people getting assaulted out there in the street regularly, stuck up at gunpoint, kind of thing. And then the level of harassment. I mean, back in 1999, they didn't really care what you did. You go out on the street, you handle business, you served the customer, and then you did whatever you want. There wasn't all this monitoring and supervision and all that. So the job has gotten a lot harder for a letter carrier. in a lot of ways. And the fact that we lost that separation that we once had between us and the clerk job, is a good example of poor leadership and poor strategy in our contract negotiations. And as you pointed out at that meeting, we had the most leverage in the summer of 2023, and that was probably the time when we should have went to arbitration and made our case for the contract that we deserve. And anyway, you can't rewind the clock, but it's just, throughout this campaign, people ask the question, Mike, what makes you any different? And I'm like, well, I'll tell you. And it's not just hindsight being 2020, because I was saying these things at the time, even before we got into contract negotiations, that this is our opportunity the letter carrier craft is never more valuable than we are today, and we didn't take advantage of that opportunity that we had to kind of right size some of the things that we've lost, some of the losses we've had since January 10th of 2013, when the DOS award came out. So you guys want to move on? I wanted to talk about some of the stuff that came out um, regarding the White House budget and the stuff that came out of the Senate that the NELC put up on our website. Just making sure that everyone's paying attention to that stuff. I saw, Kevin, I saw your senator on one of the shows. I just happened to be scrolling through the
Yeah.
channels, and is that guy a friend of ours? That Josh, whatever his name is?
Well, he's I think he finally realized that he needs the rural areas, and so anything that he's done for us is to save the rural areas, the delivery and stuff, and that when they found out that that they were going to start closing these mail processing plants and stuff, then he finally got on board with it. I mean, I don't know. Missouri is a St. Louis on one side and Kansas City on the other, and Columbia in the middle, and all the rest of the states like Alabama. So, as far as politically leaning, so that's where his support is. Anything he's willing to do for us, that's just gravy. I mean, Sam Graves, who represents basically the top third of Missouri, is was always on the committees that oversee us and stuff, one way or the other, small business or oversight committee and things like that. And he always sponsored the 6-day delivery thing, and we've had to use, as far as legislative action, we've used the Republicans that we can.
Yeah, that's why I was asking the question, because I mean, I know there's different political persuasions and ideologies and stuff, but we've been able to win some of those people that you would think would not be friends of ours on our side, and he's one of them. The Josh, and both of your senators actually been on our side on some of the issues regarding the postal service and universal service, and the value of having that, and the fact that there's no tax money in the postal service, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's also that constant push to lump us in with government, and those that are ideologically opposed to big government, which, technically we're not part of the government. We're off budget. We don't, tax money doesn't fund the operation. It's a free service to the American people. But the Postal Service, when they're operating at a loss, that's when it comes into question. Is the Treasury going to have to spend money on the Postal Service, and or can they save money on some of the things that they're spending money on now? Like the example is the vehicles. If there's money in the budget that's going to go toward the Postal Service, redoing their fleet and getting new vehicles, if they pull that money back, they can spend that money someplace else, that kind of thing. But the White House released their budget this week. And we've had problems with the White House releasing a budget going back to the Obama years and different people in the White House. But this is the first time I've heard. We know they've been trying to go after what federal workers call official time, and
Yeah.
that's paid. That's paid steward time. And of course, in our contract, 17.4 is payment of stewards, and we have it just solidified that our stewards are on the clock. And so you would say it doesn't matter what the White House budget is, and maybe it won't matter to us how that plays out, but it might, because Article 43 says a change in the law will trump, what's in your contract. And so we could be facing a situation where we, the union, would have to fund all of our steward time, and that would be a big game changer. I just think that with the ideologies and the kind of stresses and things that are going on in Washington, let's not put our guard down about anything that comes out. And then of course, the big bill, the what do they call that thing? The great big whatever. That thing, when it passed the House, it passed with the elimination of the Social Security supplement, which allows a lot of our people to retire at the age of 57 versus 62. Saves 5 years on your retirement. Pretty major thing for the people that want to retire at that age, and something that when we went into the first system, it was something that we negotiated. And so when you took the job as a letter carrier, any postal worker, or any federal worker, actually, this was part of the bargain that if you worked hard and you got to that point, you would be able to retire. And for them to take that from us is a pretty lousy thing to do, particularly the job of a letter carrier, which is a lot harder. You're out on the street, you're on your feet all day. It wears on your body in a way that it may not wear on other federal workers the same. They did take out like police and firefighters and some of the jobs that have a mandatory retirement age in the House bill. So it goes over to the Senate, and the Senate, at least one of the committees, they have these different committees, and they haven't really come up with their own version of the bill yet. But one of the proposals, Sarah, if you want to put that other clip up there, also from the NELC website, there's one of the committees in the Senate. You had it up earlier. The one of the
Okay.
committees in the Senate is proposing some really wild stuff. Um, and part of it was the elimination of the electric vehicle funding, but part of it is also, and this part they're saying technically wouldn't pertain to us as postal workers, but if you scroll down a little bit, there's a part in there. You guys got to go to the NELC website and read this stuff for yourself. But there's a part in there that talks about paying 10%, at least 10% towards your retirement. So if you're paying 4.4% now, they would raise it to 9.4% if you were willing to be an at-will employee. And I don't know how this works in the federal workforce, but they have unions and they have secure jobs, and there's people in Washington that want the federal workers to be a political job, and so they want to be able to get rid of them. And so they're trying to put language in the bill that says if you're willing to pay more into your retirement, up to 14.4%, an additional 10% from what people are paying now, with the people that are paying 4.4%, that that would allow you to have the job protection. But if you don't do that, you wouldn't have the job protection. But so all that is crazy, and it wouldn't necessarily pertain to us. But I just wanted to alert everyone to that, because the things that are going on in the federal workforce, they're coming our way. Just
Mhm.
because, like I say, there's this ideology against what they call big government, and we get lumped into it. You got the federal workforce, then you got the postal workforce, which letter carriers are part of, and we're like, it's not the same, but look, we're right there. We're right next to that, in a lot of people's minds and a lot of the lawmakers' minds. So that is going to be a challenge as far as what comes out of the Senate, and then of course they'll have to reconcile if you have two different bills the House and the Senate. So everyone still remain vigilant. But I think that we should be standing with the federal workers. I think we should be at every airport in the country, standing with the TSA workers. They took away their right to collect union dues. The TSA workers, and I wanted to have one of my guys is on the AFL-CIO board with me in Illinois. Is from the AFTRA union, American Federal Government Employees. And I wanted him to come on and to tell you guys the stuff that they're going through is draconian. And it's like I
Mhm.
say, we're one step away. We should be very much aware, and we should be standing with them because our time is coming too. The TSA workers, they could not. They're an open shop like us, but they're not a long-standing union like us, and so they hadn't had a chance to get their level of membership up, and they only had 50% of the TSA workers signed up to the union. And then the federal government said you can't do dues deduction anymore. If you want to be a member of that union, they voided their contracts, and they told them, you want to be a member of the union, you have to sign those people up yourself. Like if that were us, your union steward would have to go around, or your financial secretary, whatever, go around and collect dues every payday. Or you'd have to set up I guess nowadays you'd set up a direct deposit or whatever, but you wouldn't be able to collect dues through the paycheck. And that's what happened to them. And their union membership is decimated. Their contract was completely voided. Of course, they're paying their benefits is negotiated through the law, just like we
Mhm.
used to, because they're federal workers. But anyway, just I know I'm talking for a long time here, but just please pay attention to what's going on with the federal workforce and the stuff that's coming out of the White House and the stuff that's coming out of the House and the Senate. We I think that we should be a little bit more mobilized as a membership. I appreciate the members that are getting out there, having rallies and doing things in front of congressional offices and the senators and stuff like that. Kevin, there was one of your guys from Cape Girardeau branch, which is on the other side of the border from Illinois, and he was talking about, we have a good relationship. He lives in Illinois. He was saying, hey, we got a good relationship with the senators in Illinois, but where you can't count on these people to be your friends, or they're a little iffy, that's where our people need to really be out there, just grassroots
Mhm.
rallying and calling them and talking to them. And, we need friends. We need friends right now. And the way you make friends with these Congress people and these senators, the way you make friends with them is you let them know we're either friends or we're going to make plans to take you out. And
Mhm.
there's at least 500 or more letter carriers in every single congressional district in America. And I think we should have a strong program where we're working with every congressional office to make sure that they're on our side, and the legislation that comes out, that they take us into account and don't try to harm us. So anyway, there's a lot going on this week as far as that. I beat that one up, huh?
Yeah, a little bit.
I, I was going to say that, going into the thing that people have been there as long as me, we're paying 0.8%,
Right.
and all the new people since 2013 or whatever paying 4.4 or more than that. And, I'm thinking that we could be, you know, progressive and get them back to the 0.8%. And, and the members of the House and senators saying, no, no, we think everybody should be at the 4.4, going in the opposite
Or
direction.
higher.
Yeah.
Or higher, because I think the donation into FERS is like around 14%, a
Yeah.
little bit more than between 14-15%. And so whatever you pay as an employee, the rest of the part is what the agency pays, or what the federal government pays if you're a federal worker. So, that's a way that they can save money, that either the Postal Service can save money, or that the federal government can save money. And so they're going to keep pushing on that. And it's kind of like it takes away from your pay. It's no different than a contract negotiation.
And they can make up a lot of money you know, with, 600,000 postal employees, all paying that percentage, it's a, it's a lot bigger than the amount of workers that they would have in the TSA or in, some of the government agencies. And if they put us on budget, or moved us under the Commerce Department like they wanted to, there's no telling the end of what the end would be of all the things that they wanted to do to us, and a job would not be worth having anymore. So,
Yep. Yep, and a lot of people a lot of people already feel that way, but yeah, it can get worse for sure. The good thing about this job, in my opinion, once you get to the top of the pay scale, the pay is decent, the retirement is excellent, and the leave is excellent. So you start losing some of those things, and it's not even a desirable job anymore at the top of the pay scale. But anyway, one more thing I wanted to get in before we get out of here, and I appreciate you guys' time tonight. This week, we're going to start signing up for the new overtime desired list. We were hoping that there would be, so the new contract has a lot of changes to Article 8, and there's a memorandum 2009, M number 2009 came out, and it said that the changes would go into effect on July the 1st, including what I think everyone should be really aware of, and a lot of the other stuff we can kind of learn as we go. But what every carrier or regular carrier needs to be aware of is that now the overtime desired list that existed before no longer exists. And so normally there's a rollover process. If I don't do anything, if I was on the list before, I'm still on the list. Well, that's not the case anymore, because you have brand new lists. And so now you can get on the work assignment list, which is the same as it's always been, or you can get on one or both of the new overtime desired lists. And you have to do that 2 weeks prior to the quarter. So starting like Tuesday, which would be the 17th, you're going to want to sign your name to the list that you want to be a part of, if you want to be a part of either one of the overtime desire lists. One of them is you desire to work your NS days, and the other one is you desire to work up to 12 hours on a regular scheduled day. And you could be on both, that's fine. Or you could be on one or the other. But just because you're on the list now, any of the lists, doesn't mean it'll roll over into the next quarter, except for I think the work assignment list will roll over. But this is one of these situations. To me, it's similar to when we went into the postal only health benefit system last year, and OPM told us that if you didn't do anything, they'd put you in a similar plan in the postal only health benefits program. And it's like, yeah, you're telling us that, but I want to make sure. And so I would do the same thing. I think every letter carrier would recommend that you sign up for the list that you want to be on, or if you want to be on both of those ODLs, you can. Or if you just want to be on work assignment, you can do that. Or you say, I don't want any of these lists. I just want to ate and skate and get up out of there. So anyway, there'll be more information. We're expecting a joint Q&A, question and answers, from the national parties. That Q&A has not come out yet, but as soon as it does come out, I'm sure it'll be shared widely with everybody. But anyway, just pay attention to that as well this week. That's all I had. You guys got
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
else?
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, I think there definitely needs to be a Q&A between both because I've had like carriers or like the stewards call me and reach out and they think that management is under the impression that you have to sign one of the lists. So like if you don't want to be on the overtime list, you don't have that choice. That like you have to either sign 12-hour or you have to come
What?
in on your NS day. So yeah, that's what they were told at their labor meeting.
Now that would be a bad contract.
Yeah. Hmm.
No, that's false. I don't know where they were told that or who was told that, but no, you don't have to sign up for anything if you don't desire overtime. You don't have to do anything. The big thing people are saying is, if I want to be on work assignment and still come in on my NS day, can I do that? And the answer is no, based on the terms that were negotiated. if you're on the work assignment list, you cannot be on either one of the ODLs. If you're on one of the ODLs or both of the ODLs, you can't be on the work assignment list. And you can't transfer between lists in the quarter either. But you could get off of, you could, like, for example, sign up for both of the ODL lists and then get off of one of them if you didn't want to work that particular amount of overtime anymore. Um, the other thing that will be interesting, and I guess we got a couple of weeks on this, but for people that file grievances on overtime equitability, like they do in Columbia, Missouri, there's a new wrinkle here, which is that the list that normally Postal Service has the opportunity to make up those opportunities and hours in the next quarter. Well, that list doesn't exist anymore. As of July 1st, it's a clean break. It's a new situation. And so I don't think the Postal Service will be able to make the argument that they're going to be able to make these up in quarter three of 2025. I think they're going to have to pay out anyone who did not get equitable distribution of overtime in quarter two of 2025. But I guess we'll probably see how that plays out and be fighting it out in different places. But I'm thinking that's going to be our position when those grievances come up.
The only thing I have to say is Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, especially my dad. He's a union man himself. He's a retired glazer, a shop steward, facilitator, safety captain, sergeant at arms, all that stuff. So, yeah, shout out to my dad.
What is a glazer?
They install like glass and mirrors.
Awesome. Well, happy Father's Day to your pops. That's great. And all the rest of the fathers out there.
Yeah, all the rest too.
Yeah,
Okay.
all of them.
I don't have a long shout out or
Renee, are you ever going to get on camera, or is this going to be
yeah,
your?
man. No, I keep getting crap about not showing my face, but no, yeah. Eventually, I'll stop being that mystery person with who's Renee. So yeah,
Okay.
just not today though. Not today. Not today.
Not today. Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, Kevin, we appreciate you, brother, your time and,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
everything. And we'll give you the final word, man.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. And again, happy Father's Day to all those everybody that gets the honor of being called dad. And I hope that they got to spend the day surrounded by those they love. And I'll see you at the next thing, I guess.
All
I'm
right.
looking forward to it, my brother.
Okay.
Thank you, man. All right, you guys have a good night.